You're listening to Dark Trail Confessions. Story 1. The Man Who Wouldn't Leave Our Camp. My girlfriend and I had only been dating a few months when we decided to go camping in the Appalachian Mountains. We'd both grown up hiking, but this was our first real adventure together off-grid. We wanted somewhere quiet, far from trails and campgrounds, where the forest felt untouched, where it felt like we were the only people alive. We picked a spot that required a 3-mile hike off the nearest access road. The trail was narrow, barely marked, and the deeper we went, the older the forest seemed. Trees crowded closer together, their gnarled branches twisting toward the sky. The light dimmed earlier than we expected, even in the late afternoon, as if the woods themselves were swallowing the sun. The first night was quiet, almost unnerving. Too quiet, maybe, but we laughed it off. The crackle of our small campfire, the smell of pine, and the occasional call of a distant bird were all we heard. We felt safe, or at least we told ourselves we did. It was the second evening when things started to feel wrong. We had just finished dinner when we noticed it at the same time. The silence. No bugs chirping, no wind rustling the leaves, not even the faintest creak of trees shifting. My skin prickled. The hair on the back of my neck rose, a warning I didn't fully understand yet. Then we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy but careful. They weren't the random sounds of animals in the woods. Something was walking toward our fire, and it knew exactly where we were. A man stepped into the firelight. At first glance, he looked ordinary, maybe mid-30s. A scruffy beard, hiking clothes that didn't quite fit like they'd been borrowed. His posture was calm, relaxed, but there was something off about the way he held himself. Something too deliberate. His eyes were too dark, too still. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said. "Just looking for my campsite." There was a flatness to his voice, too practiced, too measured. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It made the warmth of the fire feel hollow. I told him this wasn't a designated area, that there weren't any other camps nearby. He stared at me, silent, for far too long. Then slowly, deliberately, he turned toward my girlfriend. "You shouldn't sleep out here," he said. Not threatening, not a warning, just a statement. Something about it made me feel smaller, like a child being corrected. My girlfriend squeezed my arm so hard I could feel her panic. We told him we were leaving in the morning. He nodded, stepped back into the trees, and vanished without a sound. Neither of us slept that night. Every crack of a branch, every distant howl of a coyote sent us rigid with fear. We didn't speak, didn't move, just lay there listening, waiting. The next morning we tried to convince ourselves it was over. We went on a short trail hike to calm our nerves, maybe distract ourselves. We were gone less than 2 hours. When we returned, our camp was destroyed. Our bags had been ripped open, food was gone, one of my boots had vanished. The tent had been unzipped from the inside, like someone or something had been sleeping there. Clothes were scattered. My girlfriend's hairbrush was missing. Nothing valuable was stolen. It was like someone was sending a message rather than robbing us. Then we saw the footprints, bare feet, too long, too narrow, circling the camp like they were inspecting it. Not random, calculated. We packed everything up in under 10 minutes and left without looking back. At the ranger station, we told them everything. The ranger went quiet. He didn't even ask questions at first, just nodded like he'd heard it all before. Then he told us 2 campers had gone missing in that region a few months earlier, A couple. Their camp had been found ransacked, just like ours. No bodies were ever recovered. As we left, the ranger added one more thing. People say it starts by pretending to be human, he said quietly. But it doesn't get the details right. And I realized then we hadn't seen a man at all, but it had seen us. Story 2. I wasn't the hunter anymore. I've hunted these mountains my entire life. I know the trails, the hollows, the way the wind moves through the trees. I know the sound of a deer breaking brush, the rhythm of a bear padding through the undergrowth. I know when something doesn't belong. That morning I realized I wasn't the one hunting anymore. It started with the smell. Rotten meat, wet fur. The kind of smell that sticks in your nose and makes your stomach turn. I thought it was a carcass left out too long, but it moved. It wasn't in one place. Every time I stopped, it stopped. Every time I moved, it followed. I tried to tell myself it was a bear or maybe a stray dog, but the tracks didn't match anything I'd ever seen. Too deep, too elongated, spaced wrong, like whatever was walking could cover impossible ground in a single bound. I felt the hairs on my arms stand straight up. Something unnatural was trailing me, and it knew exactly where I was. Then I heard the breathing. Not animal breathing. Slow, heavy, controlled, almost taunting, right behind me. My instincts screamed to turn, to run, but I froze. I could feel the weight of its presence pressing down on me. And for the first time, I realized that instinct and fear weren't enough. This wasn't a creature I could fight. I ran. Climbing the nearest tree felt instinctual. I didn't even think about it. My fingers dug into the bark as I pulled myself up, heart hammering, legs shaking. From the ground, I could hear it moving, snapping twigs, brushing against the undergrowth. Each sound was deliberate, measured. I knew it was hunting me. Then I saw it. It stood on 2 legs, too tall, too thin. Its limbs bent the wrong way, like the forest itself had twisted them. Its skin looked stretched tight over sinew and bone, a sickly gray that blended too perfectly with the shadows. Its head twitched unnaturally, jerking left and right, like it was trying to understand my fear. Its eyes, they shone in the dim light, unnervingly bright and reflective, and they were locked on me. It sniffed the air, and then it began circling the tree. Slow, deliberate movements, pausing, tilting its head, sniffing again. It knew I was there. It smelled me. My rifle rested uselessly against my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to move, but my body was frozen. I could feel the forest itself holding its breath. No wind, no rustle of leaves. Even the birds had gone silent. The only sound was the creature moving below me, a soft brushing against the earth, punctuated by the occasional crack of a branch. It pressed its face against the bark, sniffing closer. I could almost feel its hot, rotten breath through the wood, though it never touched me. And then it grinned, not with teeth, not human. It was a smile that radiated understanding, intelligence, and malice all at once. It was a grin that said, "I know where you are. I know what you fear, and I am patient." The sun was dropping. Shadows stretched longer, clawing toward the tree where I hid. The thing didn't leave. It didn't need to. I stayed frozen for hours, watching it, listening to the silence of the forest that seemed to bend around it. Every instinct I'd relied on my whole life, my experience, my tracking skills, my knowledge of the mountains, felt useless. I was prey. Night fell. I climbed down when the moon was high, using the darkness to hide myself. The thing had vanished, but I could feel it. Its awareness pressed through the shadows. A presence that stretched through the trees like a stain. I didn't stop moving until I reached my cabin. I haven't hunted since. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see those glowing eyes, the impossible length of its limbs, the unnatural tilt of its head. Every time the wind shifts just right, I smell it again. Rotten meat, wet fur. And I know deep down that it's still there. Watching, learning, waiting for the next time I wander into its territory. Story 3. The Disappearance of Timmy Collins. I grew up in a small town near the Appalachian foothills where everyone knew the stories about people disappearing in the woods. My parents always warned me, never wander too far, never hike alone, and never trust the silence, but nothing prepares you for the reality. Timmy Collins was 9 years old when he went missing. He and his parents had just moved into a small cabin near a primitive campsite. His dad had taken a new job in the region, and the family was eager to explore the mountains and forests around them. The area was remote, isolated, and the kind of wilderness where cell service barely existed. One morning, Timmy wandered ahead of his parents for only a minute while they followed a marked trail. When they turned a corner, he was gone. At first, they thought he had wandered down a side trail. They called for him, shouted his name, waited. Nothing. Silence, dense and oppressive, filled the forest. Not a bird, not a squirrel, not even the wind seemed to move. Search teams were deployed immediately. Hikers, rangers, and volunteers combed every inch of that forest for days. Helicopters scanned the treetops. Dogs traced the trails. But there were no tracks, no signs of struggle, nothing. It was as if Timmy had been lifted from the earth and vanished. Then, 3 days later, the first clue appeared. One of his shoes. 15 miles away. It wasn't just far, it was impossible. No trail connected the campsite to where the shoe was found. No evidence of a path. The shoe was placed neatly on a boulder, upright, laces tied. Whoever or whatever had left it wanted it to be found. A week later, his jacket appeared, folded perfectly, resting beside a creek that no 9-year-old could have reached on foot. A toy car from his backpack was found in a different clearing, miles from both the cabin and the shoe. The forest had rearranged him. The pieces of his life had been scattered, almost intentionally across miles of wilderness. Locals whispered. They said the mountains had their own rules, and sometimes children simply disappeared. Some called it the shadow of the Appalachians. Others spoke of creatures that could move silently, lift people without leaving tracks, and watch without being seen. Years later, I spoke to a hunter who claimed he'd heard a child calling for help deep in the woods, far beyond any trail. He followed the voice for miles, but it always stopped before he could see anything. The forest seemed to shift around him, twisting trails he'd known his whole life. He swore it felt alive, aware of him, watching him. Timmy was never found. His parents eventually moved, haunted by the unexplained. Rangers still file missing person reports in that region, but every case seems to vanish without resolution. Clothes, shoes, personal items. Sometimes they appear far from where they should be, like breadcrumbs through a nightmare. And sometimes when the wind shifts just right, you can hear a child's voice calling your name from deep in the Appalachian woods. If you do, don't answer, because the forest isn't empty, and whatever's listening isn't human. Story 4. The Woods That Don't Let Go. I had been looking forward to this solo trip for months. I wanted to clear my head, escape the city, and hike deep into the Appalachian Mountains. The forest had always called to me. The dense, ancient woods with hidden trails that few ventured into. I'd been camping and hiking my whole life, but something about these mountains felt different. Older. Harsher. Like the forest had teeth. I parked my truck at the trailhead just as dawn cracked across the horizon. The early morning fog rolled through the valleys, hugging the forest floor like a living thing. I double-checked my gear, backpack, sleeping bag, food, water, and my emergency radio. There were no cell towers for miles. That's exactly why I like this trail. The hike started easily enough. The trail was narrow, but I recognized the signs of previous hikers. A twisted branch here, a faint boot print there. The sun burned through the fog, and I felt that rare sense of serenity hikers live for. But as the morning stretched into afternoon, the forest became quieter. The birds stopped singing. The wind dropped. Even the creek, that should have been burbling nearby, was silent. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, or maybe I was too isolated. But the feeling persisted, gnawing at the edge of my awareness. By early evening, I had set up camp in a small clearing near a creek. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows through the trees. I had barely started a small fire when I heard the first noise. A twig snapped somewhere behind me, soft but deliberate. I froze. My eyes scanned the tree line, but I saw nothing. I chalked it up to a deer, or maybe a raccoon. The forest was full of nocturnal animals. I tried to settle into my tent, but sleep didn't come. Every rustle, every groan of the trees made my heart race. Around midnight, I woke to something else entirely. The air smelled wrong. Rotten, like decaying meat, mixed with something acrid, something I couldn't identify. I sat up, fumbling for my flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but empty woods. Then I heard it. A voice, soft and guttural, carried across the clearing. Not human, not quite. I froze, trying to locate the source. My flashlight caught movement at the tree line. A shadow so tall it shouldn't have existed. I stood up slowly, trying to make myself look calm, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. And then it stepped into the light. At first, I thought it was a deer. Its shape was familiar from a distance, tall, thin, the pale outline of a creature in the fog. But as it moved closer, the impossible began to reveal itself. It rose on two legs, its body stretched unnaturally, limbs bent at angles that shouldn't exist. Its skin was sallow, almost translucent in the moonlight, and its eyes, black and reflective, locked onto me with a predatory intelligence. Its breath stank of rot. I could feel it before I even smelled it. A presence that radiated hunger, malice, and something otherworldly. I stumbled backward. My radio slipped from my hand, clattering onto the ground. It made no sound, as if the forest swallowed it instantly, as if I tried to speak. My voice caught in my throat. The thing tilted its head, sniffing the air, then it grinned. Its jaw moved in ways it shouldn't. Teeth, long, uneven, yellowed, and sharp. Not human teeth, not even animal. I turned and ran. My backpack snagged on a tree root, but I ignored it and crashing through the underbrush, hearing the creature behind me. Branches snapped, twigs cracked, but it was silent except for the rhythmic, terrifying sound of its pursuit. It didn't run like an animal, it glided, each movement precise and impossible. I dove into a small ravine, trying to lose it in the shadows. My flashlight flickered, then died. The only sound I could hear was my own ragged breathing and the soft, deliberate steps following me. I could smell it now. Rotten flesh, wet earth, iron. I scrambled up a slope, heart hammering, and found a small grove of trees with thick trunks. I pressed myself against one, trying to make myself invisible, and then I realized it had stopped. The air went still, my ears strained. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, only the sound of my own pulse. Then I heard it. A whisper, almost human, almost familiar. Come closer. My blood ran cold. The voice shifted, distorted, twisting into something unrecognizable. Its eyes appeared in the darkness, reflecting the faint moonlight. I ran again. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever this thing was. I could hear it moving behind me, faster now, almost laughing. Every instinct screamed at me that I wouldn't make it if it caught me. By dawn, I stumbled out of the forest, exhausted, covered in scratches and bruises. I found the trailhead by luck, my legs shaking, my mind numb. Even now, weeks later, I can feel it. In the woods near my cabin, I catch glimpses of movement just beyond the tree line. At night, I smell it sometimes, lingering in the wind. And I know one day it will come back. It always does. The forest doesn't let go of those it wants. And whatever it was in those mountains, it's still out there, waiting. Don't forget to like and subscribe, if you dare. And if you have a story of your own, something you experienced out there, beyond the trailhead, and you'd like me to share it on the channel, you can email me at darktrailconfessions@gmail.com